In 1914, a Russian scientist named Dmitry Belyaev began an experiment that would take decades to understand. He was not studying wolves, he was studying foxes, but what he found explained something far older, something that happened around a fire, thousands of years before he was born. A fox with the right temperament, bred generation after generation, started to look like something else entirely. Floppy ears, a curled tail, a face that seemed to want to be near you. Nobody expected that, but what you are about to discover is far stranger and far more personal, because long before that laboratory in Siberia, your ancestors did something no other primate has ever done. They looked at some of the most dangerous animals on Earth, creatures built to overpower them, and instead of running, they waited. You did not domesticate the wolf. The wolf, in a way, chose you. Picture it, a cold night, tens of thousands of years ago. A pack of wolves circles the edge of a human camp, drawn by the smell of scraps. Every instinct in your ancestors' bodies would have screamed to drive them off, or to flee. Wolves were not pets. They were rivals. They competed for the same prey, moved in the same forests, and could take down a human as easily as a deer. And yet, somewhere, some group of early humans let them stay. Why would anyone do that? Scientists still argue about the exact answer. But the leading idea, shaped by researchers like biologist Raymond Coppinger, is simpler than you might think. It was not a human who decided to tame a wolf. It was the boldest, calmest wolves who decided to tame themselves. The ones who could tolerate being near people, who hung back at a safe distance and scavenged quietly instead of challenging anyone, got fed. The nervous ones, the aggressive ones, stayed hungry, in the dark, alone. Over hundreds of generations, an animal built to hunt in packs slowly rewired itself to live beside a different kind of pack. Yours. This is where it gets stranger. Wolves were not the only dangerous animal your ancestors learned to live beside. Horses, on the continents where they still ran wild, were enormous, fast, and capable of crushing a person underfoot without even meaning to. For a species with no claws and no natural speed, standing beside a horse should have felt like standing beside a moving wall of muscle and bone. But somewhere on the steppes of Central Asia, around 6,000 years ago, humans began to notice something in these animals too. Not submission, trust, offered in both directions. And then there is the animal that should never have worked at all, the elephant. An elephant can weigh more than 100 grown men combined. It needs no permission to end an encounter on its own terms. And yet in parts of Asia, humans and elephants built one of the oldest working partnerships in history, a bond so old it appears in art carved thousands of years before writing existed. How does a creature that large agree to carry, to work, to stay? But that is not even the strangest part. Every one of these bonds, wolf, horse, elephant, seems to share the same hidden ingredient. Not force, not fear, recognition. Animals with complex social lives already understand hierarchy, cooperation, and the reading of another creature's mood. A wolf reads its pack, a horse reads its herd, an elephant reads its family for decades, sometimes longer than a human lifetime. When early humans approached these animals calmly, consistently, and without unpredictable aggression, they were speaking a language these animals already understood, the language of a stable group you could belong to. Your ancestors were not offering food alone. They were offering a place in something, and an astonishing number of the most formidable animals on the planet were built, deep in their own biology, to recognize that offer and take it. Now here is where the science gets almost unbelievable. Researchers studying modern wolves, raised closely by humans, found something that should not exist if trust were only about food. These wolves, tested for a very specific ability, could follow a human's pointing finger to find a hidden object. It sounds small. It is not. Even chimpanzees, your closest living relative, struggle with this. But a wolf that grew up around people could do it almost instantly. Somewhere in the last 15,000 years, an animal built to hunt independently developed a talent for reading human gestures almost as naturally as reading its own kind. That did not happen by accident. It happened because trust, once it starts, reshapes an animal from the inside. And this is where the story turns personal for horses too. A horse's eyes sit on the sides of its head, built to scan for danger in almost every direction at once. It is, by design, an animal wired to notice threat before anything else. But researchers studying horse behavior have found that a horse can distinguish a smiling human face from a neutral one, and will respond differently, calmer, more curious, around the smiling one. An animal engineered by evolution to expect danger somehow learned to read the most subtle signal of safety a human face can offer. What happens next is where the story gets harder to look away from. Elephants may go even further. Field researchers working with elephants across parts of Africa and Asia have documented behavior that looks almost impossible to explain through instinct alone. Elephants that lower their trunks near people they trust. Elephants that seem to slow their pace deliberately when walking beside someone smaller and slower than themselves. Some researchers describe this as a form of empathy, though the word is debated in science, because it is nearly impossible to know exactly what an elephant feels. But what is not debated is the behavior itself, an animal capable of overpowering a person in a single motion, choosing, again and again, not to. Here is the counterintuitive twist buried underneath all of it. You might assume the most dangerous animals would be the hardest to bond with. The opposite may be true. Animals with the size and strength to dominate every interaction are often the ones with the most complex social minds, because raw power without social intelligence is a short-lived evolutionary strategy in a world full of rivals, and cooperation extends life, protects offspring, and builds alliances that raw force cannot. The wolf's pack, the horse's herd, the elephant's family, all of them are proof that strength alone was never the winning trait in nature. Reading others, remembering others, choosing when to hold back, that was the winning trait. And your ancestors, without fully understanding why, were speaking directly to that ability every time they sat quietly by a fire and let a wild creature decide, on its own, to stay a little closer. Today, you may never stand beside a wild wolf or share a hillside with a herd of horses, but you carry the echo of that same instinct every time you meet the eyes of a dog who trusts you completely, or feel a strange calm settle over you near a large, gentle animal that could hurt you and chooses not to. That feeling is not modern. It is not sentimental. It is the same ancient negotiation your ancestors made around a fire tens of thousands of years ago, replayed quietly in your chest every single time. A fox in a laboratory in Siberia grew floppy ears and a softer face simply because scientists selected for calm behavior around people. Your ancestors did something remarkably similar with wolves, with horses, with elephants, not in a laboratory, but in the wild, one hesitant, patient interaction at a time. They did not conquer these animals. They were chosen by them, again and again, until an entirely new kind of bond became part of what it means to be human. If you have ever felt something like this with an animal of your own, a dog that seemed to understand you before you said a word, a horse that leaned its head into your hand, leave a comment and tell that story. And if this made you see the animals around you a little differently, a like helps this reach someone else who needs to feel it too.